Oh man, welcome on Democracy. I am Fred Wellman, your host of on Democracy FP Wellman. So glad to have you. We had a great show. I'm so excited. Let's not waste any time because I want to get right to this interview. Man, welcome back. I still am Fred Wellman. It's been 30 seconds, I know. This is On Democracy FP Wellman right here on the MeidasTouch Network and wherever you get your favorite podcast. Remember, as always, to like, share, leave a comment. You know I stay up late Friday night and Thursday to talk to you guys, so please make sure you say hi to me. Otherwise, I get lonely. I'm just sitting there drinking in my house by myself. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So in the meantime, I'm so excited. Man, it's crazy as always. Every week I say, I've actually been changing a little bit, but every week I say it's been a crazy week in Washington. It's just crazy everywhere now, right? I mean, we're in the world of an alternate reality, it feels like sometimes. I'm on the way to the studio today. I saw a story that basically Trump did a filing with Judge Chutkan in the D.C. January 6th trial. And he just said, well, I'm just going to assume this is going to be held, so I'm just not going to participate anymore. Like, it must be so cool to be able to just decide you're not going to participate in your criminal trial. But that's the reality we live in. And I couldn't think of a better guest this week than someone who's spent a lot of time diving into the world of alternate reality on Fox News than Brian Stelter. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Brian is going to introduce a New York Times bestselling author of 3 books, including his newest, Network of Lies, which if you don't see on the screen at this point, you're blind. Brian, of course, was previously a media reporter at New York Times, chief media correspondent for CNN Worldwide, and anchor of reliable sources. Man, I've been a fan for a long time, so it's so great you took time for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You've had quite a month. I mean, you're on The View, and then you did an interview with Kara Swisher, and now right here on the MeidasTouch Network. I'm telling you, man.
I would say saving the best for last, but this is not nearly the end. So
no, I know you got to sell those books. Well, the great thing about this show is our viewers are passionate and they buy books. And I got to tell you folks up front, it's a great book. It's fascinating, especially for the moment. It's very, very current. If you could see up close, you may see tabs sticking out of my copy because there's like 4 or 5 pads. I took all my business cards on my desk and stuck them in key parts. And so let's just dive into it. Brian, there's been a number of books about Fox News, obviously, lately. You wrote, I think Hoax was about Fox News, right? But I think this was a different one, right? Because the Dominion lawsuit kind of gave you access to ministry. Tell me why this book now, why is it so different than what you've done before?
Because this is the on the record story.
Right.
In the past, I've been dealing with anonymous sources, confidential sources, hosts and producers and executives,
whispers,
people that wouldn't put their names to these stories. And I feel like the reporting that I had in Hoax, which was mostly anonymously sourced, was then put on the record by Dominion's lawyers because Dominion's lawyers went in there and found Sean Hannity's emails and Rupert Murdoch's emails, Tucker Carlson's text messages. So all of a sudden we had this incredible treasure trove of documents from inside Fox, and I felt like I had to put it into a book.
And it wasn't easy to find this stuff, right? I think it's all buried. I mean, we all know lawsuits. I know lawsuits very well. It's not like you can Google it, right?
Public filings are not really public.
No.
Yes, if you get to Wilmington, Delaware, you get into the government database, get into the court database, you can get a hold of these documents, but they're out of context, they're out of order. So really the project for me was taking all this raw material that Dominion was able to obtain through its lawsuit and making it make sense, putting it in chronological order, telling a story with it.
Yeah. And it's a hell of a story, right? I mean, and one of the most shocking things for me, this middle tab right here is, and I should have known this because I do follow the news, it's kind of my job, but because the base of this goes around the lies, right? This goes around, most of your focus is on the big lie surrounding, the election and how Fox News is a part of that arc. And of course, leading the Dominion and Smartmatic lawsuits. But I had no idea how the Dominion lie actually started. Is it Janine? Of course, my favorite one, Maria Bartiromo, is involved in this. But how did the hoax about these voting machines really start?
Right. It really started the same weekend that Biden was projected to be president-elect.
Yep.
If you think back to November 2020, instead of election night, we had election week.
Oh, I remember.
It went on for 4 or 5 days, and it was pretty clear by Saturday morning Biden was going to be president. That's when all the networks made the projection. And on that same day, the same day that people in New York and LA and DC and other people are going to the streets celebrating Biden's victory, you had Maria Bartiromo emailing with Sidney Powell, the Trump-aligned lawyer who recently pled guilty in Georgia. Sidney Powell had received this batshit crazy conspiratorial email from a random woman in Minnesota who, by her own account, had wackadoodle ideas. And in this conspiratorial
that's the subject.
email,
the header you used on the chapter was wackadoodle, if I remember correctly.
It's wackadoodle. And yet it's this rambling email full of ideas about Dominion and Nancy Pelosi and voting machines and hacking. And because this random email is what Sidney Powell and Maria Bartiromo want to believe, they want to believe Trump has a chance. They want to believe maybe he won. They want to believe maybe he can hold on to power. Sidney Powell sends it to Maria. Maria sends it to Eric Trump. And then the next morning, Sunday morning, Maria Bartiromo basically, she appears to read from it almost word for word on the air, setting Sidney Powell up to defame and smear Dominion. So you have a situation here where, you know, it's a TV host and a guest who are in cahoots, who are colluding to present this conspiracy theory, alternative reality about what really happened with the election. And I think it's important, Fred, because the big lie didn't just come out of nowhere. Trump didn't just, you know, conjure it up out of thin air.
Right.
It was made to happen. It was given to him by people like Sidney Powell, Maria Bartiromo.
Yep. And it's something I've said a lot about Trump is I had, there's so many guests on the show. We had a wonderful guest a few months ago, and he said very well that in many ways, Trump is a reflection of what he's hearing. You know, his whole style when he gives speeches, he sees what people are saying, that becomes his thing. And that's what this is. None of his ideas aren't original, but they are tested in these speeches and these things. And he's getting them from Fox News and elsewhere. And that's the case here, right? Where what he wanted to hear was handed to him right on his favorite TV channel, and he went from there and ran with it, right? He's more of a, I don't know the right word, Forrest Gumpian, I guess.
A parrot, you know, a parrot, a puppet. He's just, he repeats what he's hearing. It is oftentimes what he's being told by Fox. And look, that was the point of hoax in 2020, which I reassert in Network of Lies. Trump, yes, he was boosted into office by Fox. He wouldn't have won the election without Fox.
Yep.
But once he was in office, he was misinformed. He was disinformed. He was deceived by his friends on Fox. You know, I make the case in Network of Lies that, you know, the red wave of 2022 that didn't materialize, right? There are all these situations where Trump and his fans are misinformed by their favorite network. And certainly, you know, that's what happened with the election in 2020. He was told a story about Dominion, that he was the victim and that Dominion was a villain. Smartmatic was another villain. There were these voting companies out there that were stealing the election from him.
Yeah,
and this story, which of course he wanted to believe, right? It was sold to him over and over again on Fox. And it was not just sold to Trump. It was sold to Trump's fans, his voters. Some of them even bought tickets and flew to Washington and charged up into the Capitol as a result.
Right. I mean, and it all goes from there is that ecosphere, that echo chamber, if you will, of repeated lies and repeated lies. And you know, I was I don't know if you know, I was a public affairs officer in the Army. That's what my last job was. General Petraeus decided I should be a spokesman because I'm good on TV, I guess. And I ended up, you know, kind of getting involved in that. And I'm passionate about the media. I'm passionate. You know, I learned. A matter of fact, one of my first big assignments was Iraq. Talk about a little baptism of fire in 2005. I learned under great media giants like John Fisher Burns, 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner from the New York Times. If you remember, he was the Fish Farm Bureau chief for
John
New York
Burns,
Times. John was an amazing guy, tall guy, crazy, classic journalist, looked terrible all the time, hair was crazy, hadn't lived in the United States like ever, you know. And I remember going on to, you know, bases with John. He'd like take me under his wing and say, you're an idiot. Here's what the real story is, you know. And that's why I have much love. And as part of that, when I came back from Iraq the first time, when I found out I was going to be a spokesman, actually, Kira Phillips and I become friends. I spent the day at CNN with her. She kind of wanted me to show me how things work. And I went to the morning meeting there, the production meeting where the stories were talked about from New York. I was in Atlanta. You know, everybody came in and kind of decided what the stories were for the day. There was a whole process of the story development. So I'm always baffled by how that doesn't happen at Fox. I mean, you literally said in one segment, I remember it just caught my eye as I was reading it, like Fox, I think it was an offhand comment from you in the book, which was about Tucker Carlson and how his producers look at the news and decide what to be angry about that day. Where is it going wrong? I mean, why? I'm baffled by how is there a system, and how does it allow so much trash to flow onto their network?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well,
Long question.
Definitely. Look, first of all, Fox is many things in one. It is a relatively small news operation, a really big propaganda operation, and then it's also got entertainment programming, lifestyle programming. They have Fox Weather, they have a weather network.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different things that live uncomfortably, uneasily within the same organism, within the same brand.
Right.
And I acknowledge it up front to say, yes, there are reporters working at Fox. They wake up in the morning and they want to go gather information and tell the viewers.
Yep.
But those reporters are so overwhelmed by this propaganda machine that doesn't really want to hear what they report, but instead wants to focus on what Sean Hannity wants to be true, what Laura Ingraham hopes is true, what Jesse Waters wants to make to be true, right? That is the focus of Fox. And so in that environment, there's not really a role for an editorial meeting to talk about what's happening in the world, what might be happening later today. Instead, what Fox is doing is reacting to the news from other places and complaining about it, right? Bitching about it, moaning about it, rejecting it, denying it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's largely, so it's really we think about cable news as being a news thing, but it's really talking about the news. That's what Fox does. They talk about the news. They complain about the news. They make up their own news. Gosh, you remember the recent example out of Niagara Falls? The day before Thanksgiving, Fox goes on and claims that it was a terrorist attack, when in fact it was a tragic accident. A man and a husband and wife, their car out of control, exploded by the border checkpoint. Fox was telling viewers for hours that was a terrorist attack. And, eventually they had to walk it back. They were kind of embarrassed, but no one said sorry. No one got in trouble. And the reason that can happen on Fox is because there's not a system, because there's not, as at CNN, an Atlanta-based standards and practices department, where they vet information, where they talk about the sources. Now, just because you have a system, things still go wrong. I made mistakes at CNN. Everybody makes mistakes, but at least they have a system to try to check what's true. And at Fox, there basically is none of that. It is really... it's a system. The system they have is to try to elect Republicans and destroy Democrats. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I've had fact checkers from Fox call me in previous roles. If you remember, I was the exec director of the Lincoln Project, so that was super fun. And we had, I think we counted it when the big scandal broke with John Weaver and other scandals, because they created my colleagues created 3 more scandals. I think we had 9 straight days of being mentioned every hour on the hour on Fox News, and 45 days straight of negative news. It was great. But yeah, their fact checkers are like this, is it true you went bankrupt and shouldn't be in charge of anything? It's like, I'm just going to ignore your call with thanks. It is a very different animal than a news organization that I would expect.
Well, I have the same experience. When they write about me, they'll sometimes ask me for comment ahead of time, but I know they've already decided what the story is. They've probably already written the entire draft. They've already drafted a headline. Whatever I say in response is not going to influence the story. So I typically do the same thing you do. I usually ignore them.
Yeah, there's just no point, because you're just going to dig your hole deeper. Now, so we started this thing, the Dominion lawsuit was a goldmine, and a lot of came out. That's where a lot of your material came from. Now, I guess Smartmatic's lawsuit is starting in. It's taking a little longer. What's the difference? I mean, I think a lot of the average American doesn't understand what the difference between these lawsuits and what we should expect.
Well, one of the lies that Fox spread was that Dominion and Smartmatic were actually the same company. That they were in cahoots together. And that's not true. They were rivals. They are rival companies. They're separate companies with 2 separate lawsuits. So Dominion sued in Delaware, partly because they wanted a speedy trial. And that's why that case was settled earlier this year, right on the verge of trial. It was settled in Delaware. Smartmatic sued in New York, and the courts are backlogged partly because of COVID. That case, if it gets to trial, won't get to trial until 2025. But the Smartmatic case is progressing with the discovery process, the same process that Dominion used to obtain all those emails and texts. Smartmatic is now going through the same process. They are holding depositions. The lawyers recently deposed Rupert Murdoch. So, in the words of one source, we get a second bite of the apple. The Smartmatic feels like they're able to learn from what Dominion found and then go and find even more from inside Fox. So that's what they're doing now. And you ask, what's the difference between the cases? Other than the jurisdiction and the speed of the trial, here's the big difference. Smartmatic, I would argue, has an even stronger case. And here's why. Smartmatic, was only operating in one county during the 2020 election. Smartmatic has contracts all around the world, but in the United States, only one county. And it was Los Angeles County.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think anybody imagines
very purple.
that Donald Trump could have possibly won.
very purple right? County, yeah.
So it's like, as the lawyer for Smartmatic said to me, he can get up there, if there is a trial, he can get up there and say, I can prove everything Fox said about my company is a lie because of one simple fact. We were only in LA. And so that's really interesting. And by the way, that's probably why it's not going to go to trial.
Right.
This is probably going to get settled just like Dominion got settled. But Smartmatic doesn't want to settle until they've deposed everybody, until they've read all the emails. They want to get as strong a case as they can. And like Dominion, they want to force some of it out into the public domain. Because I think for these companies that get smeared, the money is obviously a lot of the victory, but so is public accountability.
Yeah. Making
sure that the truth gets out there after all the lies.
And that's what we see. I think that if we talk about these legal cases, we talk about what's happening in New York right now. I mean, they are our opponents. I will say my opponents in my case, because I could say that are. I mean, I don't know if you know, Brian, I'm being sued by Mike Flynn for $150 million over 3 tweets. Okay. And I'm not the only one. He has sued many people. Rick Grinnell has sued people. Kash Patel is suing people. Kash Patel is actually funding. He literally says, I'm funding lawsuits against our opponents. They are using the legal system the true weaponization of our legal system is to shut down this free speech. I guess I'm surprised Fox let it go this far. But what you're saying is Smartmatic's not going to let. They're like a dog on a bone right now, aren't they?
Smartmatic doesn't want to settle until they've achieved accountability. And the same thing with Dominion. Like people wonder, why didn't Fox throw money at Dominion 2 years earlier? Well, even if they had, Dominion didn't want it yet, because Dominion wanted a really important piece of this for Dominion, as I write in the book, was having all this stuff become public. They wanted and the truth is, and like I can say this, Dominion's lawyers won't admit this, some of what they pushed into the public record didn't really involve the case.
No.
It didn't really matter that Tucker Carlson was texting his friend saying, I hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like that didn't actually affect the outcome of the legal battle, but it was juicy. It drew attention to the issue, and it drew attention to the fact that Tucker Carlson was saying one thing privately and another thing publicly. And that's what Dominion wanted to expose.
And I'm glad they did. And now Tucker Carlson works at Twitter.
I guess he's unemployed like me, but he seems a lot more desperate to be out there making movies and videos and posts and all that. He's releasing an interview with Alex Jones this week. I mean, how much lower can he sink?
Oh, I think he'll find more. And it feels like in many ways Tucker is segueing to that has become sort of the id of the MAGA movement in many ways. That kind of, you know what I mean? It feels like in a lot of ways, I know you noted in the book that you casually mentioned his producers, as I said, going through to see what anger about. But you also mentioned elsewhere that you've known him for years. I mean, you've known Tucker Carlson. Did you say 20 years in an interview? You've known him for 20 years already?
Yeah, I've known him since 2004, and that's partly because I was a cable news blogger. I had a blog about cable news back in the day. He was a host on CNN, then MSNBC.
Of course.
He and I became friendly. He even donated to my blog. We had dinner. He put me on his show. We had a friendly relationship. I was always aware of the transactional nature of it, though. He was always courting reporters, especially media reporters, people who covered him. He wanted to be viewed in a positive light. He wanted positive press. So it was obviously a transactional relationship, but I feel like I at least was able to measure the man's character a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. You know what? Let's take a quick break for a couple of our sponsors, and then we'll pop back in. Heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family you want to spend time with, is so important. So important. So we could all benefit from heart healthy energy. Now, one of the best ways to get some, by supporting your blood pressure and circulation. SuperBeets Hard Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. They're plant-based and stimulant-free, so you get a green boost without the jitters of caffeine. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants of SuperBeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. SuperBeets Hard Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my SuperBeets Hard Chews each morning, and it's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my SuperBeets Hard Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. SuperBeets is the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. SuperBeets Hard Chews support healthy circulations, so you not only get blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Now, Double your potential with Super Beats Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beats Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeats.com and using promo code FRED. That's getsuperbeats, BEETS.com, code FRED. Check out Human Super Beats. You won't regret it. Did you know poor sleep causes weight gain, mood issues, poor mental health, and lower productivity? Sleep is the foundation of our mental and physical health and performance in our days. And having a consistent nighttime routine is non-negotiable. And let me tell you, when I don't get enough sleep, trust me, you do not want to be around me the next day. Introducing Beam Dream. You know, we've been raving about Beam's Dream Powder, their healthy hot cocoa for sleep. And today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best-selling healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Now, here's the best part. It's available in some delicious seasonal flavors like cinnamon cacao, sea salt caramel, and white chocolate peppermint. Better sleep has really, honestly, never tasted better. Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, melatonin, and nano-CBD to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. A recent clinical study revealed that Dream helped 93% of users wake up feeling more refreshed, and 93% reported that Dream helped them get a more restful night's sleep. You just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk, you stir or froth, and enjoy before bedtime. I personally tried Beam Dream, and it certainly lived up to the hype. It was delicious, and I had a really lovely nighttime routine with it. And second, and most importantly, honestly, it helped me fall asleep and stay asleep. Find out why Forbes and New York Times are all talking about Beam and why it's trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of their biggest sale of the year. Get up to 50% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Fred. This discount's auto-applied at checkout, so you don't need to worry about the code. Just shop BEAM.com/Fred for up to 50% off this great seasonal sale. Man, Beam, thanks for being a sponsor of our show. Great. So in that way, I mean, so tell me about that transformation. I mean, because now, I mean, Tucker's really changed. I mean, I mean, we always knew this is Tucker, but what happened these last 5-6 years, I think, well, I guess 8 really since Trump came along, is really a unique transformation to the point of, is it the bubble he's in? I mean, is there a feedback loop driving this, Brian? Can you give me some insight on what drives what has become this persona that is Tucker Carlson?
I think bubble's a great word for it. I think he has become radicalized the way that many Republicans have become radicalized in the United States.
That's true.
Partly by relying on, I don't want to call them news sources because they're light on news and they're heavy on propaganda, relying on media sources that confirm their worst beliefs, worst biases, sometimes prejudices. And is that bubble, that filter bubble experience where you're only hearing what you already believe to be true. You're only having it reinforced all the time. You're only being told the worst about the people that you perceive as your opponents. It becomes a self-fulfilling, becomes a self-sealing environment, you know? The way that any conspiracy theory, for example, is self-sealing. If you're told that it's BS, you end up believing it more, right? Because the person telling you is in on the plot. So that's what's happened to Tucker. You know, he's in an echo chamber, an echo prison of his own making. I think the difference from 10 or 20 years ago is that back then Tucker was an acclaimed magazine writer before he went on to television. Yeah. He was known for his great in-depth magazine profiles. He's a guy who 10 years ago still read The Atlantic and read The New Yorker and wanted to be in touch with in-depth journalism and wanted to read stories outside his own bubble. But no more, not anymore. He is someone who has isolated himself. His world has shrank. And, you know, I write in the book that a lot of this has to do with Washington, D.C. and his decision to leave D.C. Yeah. He left D.C. Shortly before COVID. He now lives on islands in Florida and Maine, and I think that's a great symbol of what's happened, where he's off on his own islands. Now he might say that he left D.C. because left-wing protesters showed up outside his house and scared his wife, and there's some legitimacy to that. There were Antifa protesters who spray painted an Antifa logo outside his driveway, but even in that episode, when the police were called to his house, the way that he described the incident did not match the police report.
No way.
I believe he exaggerated what happened at his house that day. So, I think he's not only told a story to his viewers and his followers on X that is distorted and deceptive. He's also told himself these stories that are deceptive. He's deceived himself. I guess, Fred, it's that whole thing about getting high on your own supply.
That's it. And he keeps on creating new ones. Right now, he's got this relation with Elon, and of course, we know what X has become in so many ways. That toxic feedback loop that so many of them crave.
Toxic feedback loop. And it's a sad thing for me to observe as someone who respected him as a broadcaster, who viewed him as a talented journalist a long time ago. And now I look at him and I say, how do I make sure that doesn't happen to me? How do I make sure that I don't fall down a rabbit hole and just only want to believe the worst about my fellow Americans? I mean, he's at the point now where he's selling so many lies to people that it, if I was sitting with him, I feel like I could, would I be able to break him of it, right? Would I be able to look at him and say, that's BS, right? And I don't know. I think maybe he's too far gone.
Yeah, it's a question we did ask ourselves a lot at Lincoln Project, right? Is this a belief? Do the people really believe these things? And how do we break back from that? And it goes to, it's a nice place to talk about this belief system we've created. And I would call it the propaganda networks. I've had Ruth Ben-Ghiat on the show. I've had a number of experts in the authoritarian rule. And I saw an article just yesterday, I think, about how actual economic reality compared to public perceptions of it. And I think of that. And I also think about polls talking about how 40% of Americans believe that President Biden did something corrupt, when there's no evidence whatsoever to back that up. But there's this constant flood of negative economic news, negative stories about, right? And the Biden crime family, they've done such a brilliant job. You've been in this business a long time, Brian. Is this a new phenomena? And should we all be terrified as I am about that? I mean, what's your feeling about that?
I'm looking up the page of the book where I get into this, because when you mentioned Biden crime family, I think that's a critical point. I think it's important to recognize that Fox succeeded when it comes to Biden.
Yeah.
Before Inauguration Day, it was clear that these Fox stars were on a mission to brand Biden as corrupt and senile. And that phrase you used, the Biden crime family, that was Hannity's phrase all the time.
All the time.
Portraying him as too weak and too old was happening even before he was inaugurated. And I think we have to recognize it worked, with a lot of people. It worked. That messaging from the far right media has worked its way into the broader media and political environment.
There you go.
Has it always been this way? No, this is much, much more, the environment, information environment is much more polluted and much more poisonous than it was 20 or 30 years ago. Yeah. And I think that's because of the network. The word in the title, the network is the key part of the title, Network of Lies. Yeah. The network effect is the key part of this, because yes, Fox is critical. It is a dominant player in right-wing media. But when you have lots of other websites and YouTubers and podcasters and all these other people reflecting the same messaging to you all the time, when you're getting it from email listservs and you're getting it from X and from your Facebook friends, and you're hearing all the same things that Fox is saying all the time, it's amplified. It's a real network effect. It has, I think, a much more profound impact on people than simply hearing it from Bill O'Reilly on Fox the way you did 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. As you were speaking, I am thinking back to those early days. Like I said, my first major job as a spokesman for the Army was Iraq in 2005, a little bit before that. But it was very different, right? When a reporter said something inappropriate about us, I would call them up and say, hey, that's inaccurate. Let me have you over. We could work it out, right? And it was, But even in those early days, I remember telling my colleagues in the Army, look, when Fox News said we killed 100 terrorists, if you will, but the truth is we only killed 3 and 2 of them were family members. Fox isn't going to get in trouble for that exaggeration, right? Because a lot of these military guys thought they were our friends. You know what I'm saying? That they're a friendly media, if you will, to that mission. And I would say it isn't that way. It's the only friend we've got is facts. And that has become a very blurred thing, right? Facts is no longer a thing. And like you said, we talk about the Biden crime family, and here we are with that. Now,
well, you say facts is no longer a thing. Let me push back. Let me say, all right, most people still do care.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Most people still, maybe I'm naive, but I think most people still want to know what is true in the world.
Well, yeah.
However, when it comes to the hyper-partisan political environment, that becomes a little less true. And there are clearly sizable minorities of the public that don't care, don't really want to engage in a mission of figuring out what is true, but rather just want to have their biases reaffirmed.
All right, that's fair pushback. I'll take it. But you're right, and it is. We do live in a world where the facts are being twisted in ways that do. And I look, I'm one of those guys. It's hard to say that I'm a partisan. I am. It's what I do for a living, as a matter of fact. And along those lines, something I talked about a lot, Brian, is this Project 2025 and the Agenda 47. If you follow that at all, and one of the topics in that series, in those plans, is touting direct presidential control over these independent agencies that are supposed to have boards of directors, like the FEC and the FTC, but specifically, I think of you with the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, right? And Trump, in light of Trump threatening just the other day to punish MSNBC and then punish, of course, Comcast, the owners of MSNBC. If you talk about FTC control, you talk about FCC control, things get really scary, right? I mean, we're in a very weird world when we're talking about these plans. What do you think of this? I mean, what should the average American be taking from all of this?
Right. I just published a piece this week for Neiman Lab about this. And the title is Media Owners Are in the Crosshairs as Trump Craves Retribution. I think I wanted to focus on the ownership point here, because whether it's Lachlan Murdoch, who's the CEO of Fox, or whether it's David Zaslav, who's the CEO of Warner Bros. Discovery, my former home at CNN, it's going to be the owners that are going to be tested, just like the individual journalists, because it's the owners who have the law on the line for these businesses reporting to shareholders. And they're going to have to be a part of this firewall, a part of this heat shield against what Trump is threatening, what he's promising. Because that's what he's doing, right? He's promising to his voters to punish the media. I think the dynamic we're looking at when we talk about the 2025 agenda, this Project 47, is that whatever he said in the first term, whatever words he uttered, whatever threats he made, there's going to be an attempt to translate it to actions in the second term. And to surround himself with people who will make those actions happen, right? Who make those words turn to actions. That seems to be what we're hearing, whether it's the FCC or other agencies. So I think this is a challenge for owners as well as journalists. It's a challenge for executives as well as for reporters. What are you going to do? How are you going to stand up to this? What are you going to do and not just stand up to it? How are you going to inform the public of the stakes before Election Day? So I guess we would take it in two parts, right? It's how are you going to inform the public of these dangers, and then what are you going to do to stand up to it? And I think for different companies, there's going to be different answers. But when I look at it as a media reporter in the media realm, that's how I'm approaching it.
Yeah, that's it. Now we got Jeff Bezos too at Washington Post. I mean, the layers.
He's a great example. Can I say why he's a great example?
Please.
We've already seen Trump try to abuse Jeff Bezos, try to punish Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. So Bezos bought the Washington Post a decade ago. And what we know is that in Trump's first term, there were moves by the government against Amazon in order to punish Bezos for his coverage of Trump in the Washington Post. So it was like, what do you call that in when you're playing pool? Like, trying to knock it off the, it's forget the term, but
bank shot.
He's using whatever he can to punish an owner of a newspaper. And that was not just words; those were actions. And I think we need to look at those episodes from the first term to see what he might try to do in a second term.
And there won't be guardrails this time. There won't be because of Project 2025 and its Agenda 47, which is very clear that he will seed these departments with his own zealots and acolytes. Those guardrails are professional civil service people who will say, no, that's illegal, that's no good. They won't have those. There's no way a second term has those people this time, is there?
Right. A bank shot. That's what it's called. In pool, it's a bank shot. I just thought of it.
I got that one too.
I think we see from the public statements, from the comments of his allies, that he's going to be prioritizing people who are, I hate the word loyalists, because to be loyal is a positive. To be loyal is something that you want to respect. So I was reading a headline about this earlier in the week, and it said, Trump to install loyalists. And I'm thinking that's like the wrong word in this context, because they're loyal. They'd be loyal to Trump, yes, but they wouldn't necessarily be loyal to the country or the Constitution. So I wish there was a better, maybe it's floozies or flunkies. I don't know. We got to come up with some better word for what these people would be.
Is a personal zealot. And the numbers are strong. I did a video last week about this Schedule F stuff and people don't realize there's only 4,000 political positions, appointed positions in the government, which is a lot, by the way. I mean, think about that. Every 4 years we have to come up with 4,000 people to fill these positions.
Right.
But that's not many. And then I think there's 8,000 senior executive service members. That's the SESs. Those are the general officers of the civil service. They're currently trying to recruit 54,000 people for the new administration. That's the target number, right? 54,000. Do those numbers real quick. That goes well beyond the top levels of these agencies. This is deep into the bench of places like the FCC and the FTC and the Treasury. Things get really scary at some point when you've got that kind of an influence deep in the government by one political appointee. Let's talk succession. We have to, because everybody loves the show, and it's a big part of your book, which is, Rupert Murdoch is 92. People are actually starting to die off. I almost said finally. That's really rude. Mr. Kissinger just passed. I mean, 92 is not a spring chicken. Can you walk us through a little bit about what is the setup at Fox with this leaders? Everybody knows Lachlan and James. They're all very different people. Can you explain that for my viewers? Like, what does it mean? What should we expect in this succession drama at Fox?
Well, this is related to the ownership conversation.
Yes,
this is the thing about media ownership, knowing who's in charge, who controls these companies, who has the power. And that's exactly what this is when it comes to Fox.
Yeah.
Lachlan Murdoch is Rupert Murdoch's oldest son. He's the favored son. He's in charge of the companies. Mm-hmm. But for as long as Rupert's alive, Rupert's always going to be influential. So, there were headlines earlier this year, Rupert Murdoch stepping aside from the board of directors. Now he's the chairman emeritus. People wonder, what does it mean? Well, what it means is that Rupert's trying to signal to the whole world that he wants Lachlan to stay in charge. It's important for Rupert to signal that, because when Rupert dies, there will be a battle for control. There will be a power struggle for the soul and the heart and the finance and the bank account of Fox Corporation. Yeah. And that's because there are 4 siblings that are involved in this. James and Lachlan are 2 of them. And then there's 2 sisters, half-sister Prudence and sister Elizabeth. Okay. And basically these 4 children, these 4 siblings, they each have a vote for the future of Fox and News Corp. In the event of Rupert's death, it's going to be a 4-person decision about what happens to these assets. Wow. You could imagine a situation where James, who's a more liberal, more moderate son, he has a vision for Fox News that moves it in a dramatically different direction. He hates what Fox has become. He thinks the primetime shows are poison. Yeah. His wife, Catherine, feels the same way. So he can't do anything about it when his dad's alive. But when Rupert passes away, James can step in and try to take control. He can try to make a deal or take over Fox News. He can try to outvote Lachlan with the help of his sisters. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. And that is why it's like Succession. It's impossible to know how it plays out. I mean, goodness, by the time Rupert Murdoch dies, maybe someone else will already own Fox Corp. We just don't know. Yeah. But I think the important detail for your viewers, Fred, is, Lachlan is conservative. He doesn't like Trump, but he's conservative. James is the wild card. He would actually affect regime change. He would overthrow a lot of what you see on Fox News today.
That's a dream we can all have, I think. And I think we'll leave on the back again, going to the afterword of the book, which I try to read. And you did bring up a story that I followed very closely for MeidasTouch about the fake homeless veterans. If for those who don't know, there was a story a few months ago where, and by the way, your book's so damn current, Brian. There was just a few months ago where the story came out upstate New York that because of whatever immigrants being shipped upstate, they kicked veterans out of this hotel, out of their homeless veterans, and it was a huge story. And Fox played that. And in the end, the long and the short of it was all fake. The woman who had started it was lying, but the Congress, the state rep who supported her got himself on TV. You know what I mean? I mean, it was, it ended, and I guess for me, and it's funny that you really use it as an example in the afterword of the book that, even in spite of all this, nothing's really changed, right? And it was funny because I used that. I think I literally said that in my video for MeidasTouch. It just shows that Fox News is still a network of lies. I mean, where does that leave us? I mean,
Yeah, when it comes to defaming voting technology companies, I think Fox has learned a lesson.
A very specific lesson, right?
Like they instead of saying Dominion, they'll say that evil voting company. Like they just won't say the company's name, right? So they've learned a lesson in a very narrow way. It's almost like not allowing Trump on for live interviews. They only tape their interviews with Trump now for legal exposure reasons. But he's still on and he's still lying. So I think the story about the alleged vets kicked out for migrants didn't happen. Right. It goes to show that when Fox sees a story like that, which came from the Murdoch-owned New York Post, a story that's too good to be true, too terrible to be true, they will still jump on it. They will still run with it. And then the most revealing part is once it fell apart, once reporters from real outlets did real reporting and found this really wasn't true.
A local newspaper, by the way. Just
local the Mid-Hudson News.
Yep.
Laura Ingraham came on a Friday night and tried to bury the correction and said, quote, "The group behind the claim made it up. We have no clue why anyone would do such a thing. And of course, Fox's breathless coverage was exactly the reason why someone would do such a thing. You know, there's a sucker born every minute at Fox. And I'd like to think that they learn from these lessons, but they don't. Not unless they have to pay $100 million in settlements. They don't learn. And ultimately, I think it's about supply and demand. It's not just that they are supplying this nonsense and noise. It's that there's a demand for it from their audience. It's that they have an audience that they've nurtured for years, that they've deceived for years, that want to be lied to. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the harder part of this that we all have to wrestle with. Why do so many people want to believe these crazy stories?
Yeah, and how do we do that? And how do we? So I guess we'll end with that. How the hell do we save our democracy from all this, Brian? I mean, this really is democracy destroying, democracy endangering stuff when we have such a virulent, essentially propaganda machine that is so very effective. You know, a congressman says something on the chain. I joke about all the time these elected representatives on the Republican side. They got that sweet Fox hit out of it. They'll say something crazy on a committee meeting, and they'll be on Hannity 8 hours later. It's like a 1-for-1 exchange. Craziest shit you can possibly think of on TV on the committee. 8 hours later, you're on Sean talking about those crazy libs. I mean, how do we as pro-democracy, because that's what this is, MeidasTouch and on democracy, we are, hardcore pro-democracy. What does that leave us for? How can pro-democracy forces fight back? And then I'll let you go.
I think number one, public pressure does make a difference. Okay. Public pressure does matter. Whether it's the protesters who stand outside Fox headquarters on Tuesdays, whether it is bloggers who are pointing out the lies and nonsense that's online, whether it's on social media, sharing these clips that show the hypocrisy of Fox, whether it is people pestering and demanding change from Lachlan Murdoch directly. This stuff matters. It's tempting to think that it doesn't. It's tempting to think that no one there is capable of shame, that they don't even notice what's said about them. But they do. Take it from me. I still talk to a number of sources at Fox, a number of hosts at Fox. The public pressure matters. The headlines on Mediaite matter. The stories from, the activist group Media Matters matter. This stuff, it doesn't go into a vacuum. It doesn't disappear into a wormhole. Public pressure does make a difference. So I say that because I think we've seen changes. I think Tucker Carlson's firing is probably the most dramatic example. Yeah. Tucker was fired for lots of reasons. I have pages of reasons in the book for why. But one of the reasons why is Lachlan Murdoch didn't want the headache anymore. Yeah. And why were there headaches? Well, it's because advertisers were repelled by him, because all people were pointing out all the conspiracy theories. That stuff matters. The outside attention does matter. And then I think number two, most Americans don't want to live in an autocracy. No. Most Americans do not want this country to backslide away from democracy any further than it already has. However, many Americans may not know the stakes. They may not know what's in front of them. They may not know what's coming. And so I think there is where tell me if you think I'm wrong. There's an information gap that we need to help fill, where you've got a lot of good, decent people who don't want to see any dictator or any form of government in any direction like that. Yeah. But they may not know what's coming. They may not know what's being promised by certain candidates. They may not know the stakes of this election. I see that as an information gap that can and will and I should be filled in the next 11 months by people like you.
There you go. That's thanks for that. You led me right to it. That's exactly it. We talk about it a lot in the show. I didn't come up with the idea. I think somebody came up with the idea with too much coverage of the odds rather than the stakes, right?
That's Jay Rosen at NYU. Jay Rosen, it's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
And that idea has really seeped deeply, I think, into members of the media.
I hope so, because there's Columbia Journal CJR did a great review of the headlines in the New York Times and the Washington Post about how overwhelming all the stories are about odds. So I think I'm glad you say that, because it's something we fight. It's personally a mission of mine. Again, as a communicator, as a spokesman for the military, the government, as a PR guy, and now as a political activist, we have to get the truth out there, and the truth we have to fight for the people to understand the larger picture of what we face as a country. Man, I can't thank you enough. I know you got holidays to start. Happy Hanukkah. I hope you enjoy it. I didn't want to let you go without saying I understand your mom passed away last month, and I just so sorry for your loss. I know how hard that is, no matter what age you are. So you've had a heck of a month.
Thank you. She taught me everything I know about any writing talent I had, any writing talent I have came from her. So
wow.
It's been sweet in a way to be out here promoting a book, because I feel like I feel her presence when I'm doing it. So thank you for saying that.
That's lovely. Well, enjoy your holidays. Thank you for joining us. It's just a joy to finally get to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And good luck with and by the way, before you go, Networkalize now available everywhere, right? I got it at Amazon.
You got it.
You know, be sure to get it. We got a copy. Our loyal viewers and listeners are good book buyers. So folks, pick up the book. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I burned through it so fast it made my head spin. It's worth the pickup. So
thank you.
Luck.
Happy holidays.
Likewise.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Man, that was fun. I really am a fan of Brian. I've been a fan of CNN. I admit it. That's, again, I was fortunate as I came into the idea of being a spokesman for the United States government. I had the opportunity to go and spend a day at CNN and kind of learn the ropes. And again, I do tell the truth when I say a lot of great journalists, Pulitzer Prize winning journalists especially, have been very good to me as teaching me about what's right and what's wrong in the world. So I'm still a big fan of our media and our journalists, and that's why we have so many of them on here, right? So again, terrific book. I'm not kidding. It's very different. The Dominion lawsuits get given Brian so much good information that you haven't seen elsewhere. I did not know that some crazy lady who believed that spirits told her about Smartmatic is how all this thing started. So a lot of cool information. So please be sure to pick up his book. And I always tell our book author guests that you guys are great about buying their books. So don't prove me wrong. All right. Leave a comment on the replies in the video so you can see you did it. In the meantime, there's a lot going on, obviously. I won't try to sum it up. You heard me mention my little lawsuit thing. We'll probably do that in a separate video sometime. Talk about that, Matt. We are getting ready to follow our filings against a ridiculous lawsuit that is completely based in fiction. So I'll be delicate. Matt's back there waving at me like, don't do it, don't make it worse. My lawyer, I can hear my lawyer buzzing in my ear like, hey, what are you doing? Don't talk about it. Look, the fact is there's a lot of people using our legal system to shut us up, and there's no question about that, folks. They want us to be scared. I've been doxxed before. I've had threats sent to me. Look, that's part of this business, but they want us to be scared. And I'll leave you on this note. Couple of great articles came out today from Greg Sargent, former guest here on from the Washington Post, and then of course my friend Dennis Africa, also a former guest, our first guest on the MeidasTouch Network. He was in Salon today talking about how Trump and this inevitability. Keep talking about what his cabinet's going to be and what laws are going to. This is what strong men do. This is what Ruth Ben-Ghiat says too. Matter of fact, Ruth, man, talk about the on democracy circle. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, a guest, is quoted in Greg Sargent's piece, a former guest, twice over, and then Dennis Africa uses that for his piece. I'm telling you, man, this is the place where they all go. and Ruth talks about that. These strong men, these authoritarians, they want to create an air of inevitability so that we lose our will to fight. Okay? Trump's whole modus operandi, Steve Bannon, Kash Patel, the reason they're pounding, this is what we're going to do. We're coming for you. We're going to throw people in jail. They want you to be scared. They want us to spend all of our time wringing our hands, create an air of inevitability, and then we kick the shit out of them at the fucking ballot box. They'll say we cheated. The fact is, folks, we are winning. We're winning. That's why they're scared. That's why they're doing all this crazy shit, telling us they're winning, because they know. They see the polls. They see the nut job losing his mind on TV, Donald J. Trump. They know they are riding a bad horse. We do too. So please don't lose hope. Don't let them scare you. Don't let them intimidate you. Don't let them make you think it's inevitable there's going to be another Donald Trump term, because there just isn't. I know. We got to fight. We will fight. We have to fight. I assure you, we will fight. We have to fight. But there is no way, and there's no inevitability to a second Donald Trump term. Okay? So don't lose faith. Don't lose hope. That's the enemy of authoritarianism. That's the enemy. They're scared to death of your hope. They're scared to death of your faith in our democracy. This is not the place for that, is it? This is not the place. This show, this network, all of you in our community is not the place for us to lose hope for our democracy. So thank you for joining me every week with these conversations. I hope you catch my latest videos on MeidasTouch Network, wherever you find your podcast. Like I mentioned, be sure to leave a reply or a comment. As always, I'm proud to be the chairman of the Forgotten Democrats. Going back to what we're talking about, the hope that we can elect more people to Congress who aren't crazy. As always, if you want to learn more about my lawsuit with Mike Flynn or whatever we're writing, I would just love you to join our Substack community, especially as a paid subscriber. Again, that's fpwellman.substack. We'll put it up on the screen. Join the community. I'm writing more than I used to. You can find out more about this silliness going on in my life right there. You'll find out more about my past, the loss of my first wife. All those stories are in my Substack. If you haven't found it yet, I would love you to go check out our Substack. In the meantime, again, don't lose faith, man. We are winning. The reason they're so scared and desperate, because they know it too. They know it too. With that, man, I can't wait to see you next week. Thanks for joining us.